Today I want to continue in our series, The Winding Road of Life, exploring the life of Samson. I want to say I thank God for those who participating in the preaching ministry of our church on last week. Let's thank God for them. And thank you, beloved, for being so mature and you receiving them and receiving the word that God has placed for this house at this season. Judges chapter 15. I need you to keep your Bibles open because I want to cover this whole narrative. But Judges 15, verse 14, I want to pick up the end of this saga. It says, Judges 15, verse 14, I'm reading from the English Standard Version of the Bible. When he came to Leah, the Philistines came shouting to meet him. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and the ropes that were on his arms became as flax that has caught fire, and his bonds melted off his hands. And he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, and put out his hand and took it, and with it he struck 1,000 men. And Samson said, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of a donkey have I struck down 1,000 men. As soon as he had finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone out of his hand, and that place was called Ramathaleh. And he was very thirsty, and he called upon the Lord and said, you've granted me this great salvation by the hand of your servant, and shall I now die of thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised? And God split open the hollow place that is at Lay, and water came out from it. And when he drank, his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore, the name of it was called En-Hakkore. It is at Lay to this day. And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. Verse 18. You have granted this great salvation by the hand of your servant. And shall I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? And God split open the hollow place that is at Lie, and water came out from it. And when he drank, his spirit returned. I want to talk about, with the Lord's help in your prayers, I need more than victory. I need more than victory. Church, we are victims of a culture that constantly tells us that we must worship at the altar of the idol named victory. Can we talk for a minute? Many of us are consumed with winning on some level. We label success and various things as accomplishments, victory, and even domination of others, and we like to tag it victory. Our desire to win is manifested on so many levels. For the single person, you desperately work and work and work so you can win the affection of your mate. The career-driven individual, you want to win the promotion. You put in overtime after overtime. So when the considering time comes, you want to be considered for the promotion. The socialite desires and navigates through society wishing to win and gain acceptance. The disciplined athlete feverishly and intentionally works out hoping for one day to win the game, the match, or the championship, whichever category you find yourself in. We are often on the never-ending course of trying to win something. Some of us have made the lyrics of DJ Khalid our pseudo scripture reading for our lives. All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough. I'm in the right crowd. And every time I walk in the building, everybody's hands go up. For many of you, that's your scripture, not the 23rd Psalm. Your scripture is every day, I win, win, win. There are others of those of us, we have made the R&B diva Beyonce her song Winning our personal national anthem. But church, the sobering reality of our existence is there will come a season when simply winning and securing more and coming out on top will not be enough. There comes a time in our lives that which we found significance and satisfaction in will be insufficient. There will come a time in your life that the job won't be fulfilling. There'll come a time in your life you finally made it down the aisle and you still feel empty. There will come a time in your life where you've worked and you worked at everything you worked for. You still can't be satisfied. Have you ever found yourself like that? You get up in the morning and you find yourself crying. You live in a house, you have a car, but you're crying and you're pleading out because there's an empty place in your heart. Can always put your finger on it, but you know it's something. Have you been there? Or maybe there's a better question. Are you at that place today? Here we find the colorful and complex personality of Samson. He's at this place. At the opening of chapter 15, Samson, he has recovered from his wife sharing the answer to his riddle, and he had to pay a high debt to the Philistines. He goes now to his father-in-law's house. He knocks on the door. He wants to have his wife. He's full of passion. He's intoxicated with ecstasy. He knocks on the door and says, I'm ready for my wife. I forgive you. I know you told my riddle, but I'm ready to give you a night to remember. But to his chagrin, he's met with denial from his father-in-law. His wife had been given to one of his colleagues in marriage. Listen, Samson is furious. Samson says, I've had enough of these Philistines. I've had enough. They made a mockery of me. And Samson has a conference with himself. Samson is a strong man by the hand, but he's also equally shrewd. Can I tell you something? Strength is not always measured by what you can do with your hand, but strength is also conceived in the mind. So I tell you what I do. He captures 300 foxes, the text says. A better reading is jackals, because foxes are isolationist type animals. He gets 300 jackals. He ties their tails together and he lights a torch and he sends them out into the field, and they set ablaze to everything that is in their proximity. Listen, church, this is what you call revenge with excellence. Philistines raised the inquiry, who did this to us? Who committed this heinous and sophisticated crime against us? And the people who tell on Samson is the people who he had been there for the most. The men of Judah said, Samson did it. Isn't that a hard pill to swallow? When the people you're working for the most, they fail to see your value and what you're endeavoring to do for them. Isn't that a hard avenue to live on? Isn't that an unwanted dress to live at? And here they come and tell Samson, Samson, don't you know the Philistines rule over us? They come to arrest Samson, and they arrest him with the handcuffs of that day, which is ropes. And Samson says, men, do me one favor. Make me one promise. Promise me that you won't attack me. They said, very well. They handcuff him, and Samson is walking where the Philistines are, and they're escorting him, and there is noise in the distance. This is not mourning, but there's the noise of celebration. The Philistines are rejoicing that finally Samson is going to meet a painful fate. Samson has been making a mockery of them. There's a sound there saying, finally Samson is going to die. But while they're walking, the Bible makes a sharp turn and says, and the Lord's power came upon him. Can I park there for a minute? That's what God does every now and then. When your enemies think that they're going to have the last laugh, God will give you an aha moment. Is there anybody here that can testify that you thought you were going down? Everybody else was pointing and laughing at you in embarrassment, but God gave you an aha moment, and God gave you strength. God gives Samson strength. The cords melt off of him like wax, and then Samson becomes a necrophiliac. He has a fixation of playing with dead stuff. He picks up the jawbone of a donkey, and he begins to go into warfare against 1,000 men. Notice, church, Samson doesn't have a sword. He doesn't have a machete. He does not have a machine gun. All he has is a jawbone of a donkey, and he kills 1,000 men with one weapon. However, when it's all done, once the smoke had cleared and the screams of men falling and dying, once the stench of death had permeated the air, the mood changed. You would have thought that it would have been a parade in the city, that somebody would have celebrated Samson for all that he'd done, but instead Samson is surrounded by dead bodies, and his obvious victory he has secured does not give him strength. Samson is now depleted, and in the words of that famed English preacher Charles Haddon Spurgeon, he says Samson is a fainting hero. Have you ever been there? You're the strength for everybody else. And after you do everything, after you pay everybody else's bills, after you there to walk everybody else through their crisis, after you keep the house from falling down, after you get people out of their hard places, you find yourself as a fainting hero, barely able to stand up. And that's the word, church. Life can give us ecstatic moments. However, no matter how grand or large our accomplishments is, they fail to provide salvation, stability, and soundness of mind. There are some things that only God can provide. That's what I came to tell somebody. You can't get peace of mind from your money. You can't get peace of mind from your friends. There's some things only God can do. Talk back to me, 11:15. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, there's some things only God can do. Money can buy you a bed, but it can't buy you sleep. Money can buy you a house, but it can't buy you a home. Money can buy you friends, but it can't buy you company in your lonely hour. There's some things only the master can do. This is the word today. This is the take-home truth. God provides for us radically when we realize what once sustained us is insufficient. This is the deed to do. Realize you have a deeper need than what temporary success and victories can provide. That's what I came to tell you. I know you want the latest and the greatest, and you think if I get this one more thing, I'll be satisfied. But I'm on divine assignment to tell somebody there's something deeper inside of you. There's an itch that money can't scratch. There's an itch that a new man or a new woman that can't scratch. There's some things that only God can do. First thing is this. When you need more than victory, you realize this: great success produces tremendous needs. Great success produces tremendous need. Listen, Samson is a strong man. Notice he's been a one-man militia. He's killed 1,000 men with a jawbone of a donkey. Notice he's strong, but he's not invisible. Listen, he talks so cavalier about his success and his sophistication. Look, he says with 1,000 men. He struck, he says, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey have I struck down 1,000 men. Samson is so intoxicated with this strength. He's always giving these riddles. Literally, he's saying, with the jawbone of an ass, there's been heaps and heaps of mass of men who have died. Church, oftentimes, we can spend all of our time climbing the ladder of success or climbing the mountain that once we come off the mountain, it's hard to navigate the valley. Y'all don't mind if I take my time this morning, do you? You spend all of your time climbing, and you majored in experiencing the good times. You know what it is to go to the restaurant and order whatever you want. You know what it is to have a room full of friends. But after you come off of every mountain, there is also a valley that's waiting for you. And oftentimes we fail to realize that the pathway to the mountain is through the valley. And if you go up the mountain, you still have to come back to the valley. Who am I talking to today? Success will have you blinded to your own mortality. Child of God, you have to learn how to listen to the rhythm of your life. Oh yes, I know you won't ever dare to say that you're invisible. You won't ever say that you're in control, but your behavior speaks louder than your words. You work and you work and you work and you never rest and you never rest. And the fact of the matter is that the reality is after you worked, after you've persevered, after you secured everything that you wanted, you're vulnerable. After you finally made it down the aisle to marital bliss, you're vulnerable. After you finally receive the certification for the job, you are vulnerable. After you have secured the job, you are vulnerable. And that's the word for somebody. Maybe the motto of your life shouldn't be every day I win it. Maybe your motto should not be I'm blessed in the city, I'm blessed in the field. But maybe your devotional song ought to be, Father, I stretch my hand to thee. No other help I know. I need thee. Oh, I need thee. Is there anybody here that can testify I need the Lord? But this is the problem. People look at your outside and it looks like you have it all together. People see your glory, but they don't know your story. They look at the car you ride in, but they don't know how many hours of overtime you put in. They look at where you vacation, but they don't know how much time you had to put in weekend after weekend after weekend. They look at your marriage, but they don't know how you had to cry and how you pleaded with God to keep your marriage together. They look at how you are educated, but they don't know how many nights you bid or you bled the midnight oil on papers. That's God's word for somebody. People look at your outside, but they don't know what you've been through. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I know I look whole on the outside, but I'm broken. You look at the outside. Secondly, fatigue, when you need more than victory. Fatigue causes us to feel abandoned. Samson calls on the Lord. Notice this is the first time Samson ever calls on God. He doesn't call on God again to chapter 16, verse 28. Samson has a tendency to use God's strength, but failed to recognize God as the source of his strength. Can I park there for a moment? Sounds like Samson is our first cousin. Oftentimes, God gives us strength, and we utilize God's strength, and we fail to recognize we are where we are, and we have what we have, and we've arrived to the place that we have arrived to because of God. Samson, he's delirious. He's successful, but he's isolated. He's scared. Listen to what he says. He prays to God, you granted this great salvation. Listen, Samson acknowledges God's presence in his life. He says, you have given. That's a word for us, church. Oftentimes we become so inebriated by what we think we've done. We fail to realize that it's God who has done it. Oh, Lord, you have given me a job. God, you have given me a marriage. God, you have given me children. God, you have given me the ability to get wealth and have a job. Lord, you have given. Then he acknowledges God's possession of him. He says, I'm your servant. Wait, we don't like that. That's beneath some of us. I'm no one's servant, but Samson realized that he was a vessel used in the hand of God, even though he had conflicting notions. Then he says, God, this has been your performance. You've given me this great victory. Is abnormal. I kill 1,000 men with a jawbone of a donkey. Samson acknowledges God, but yet also we notice his anxiety. Listen to the text. He says, now will you let me die of thirst? That's the word. Listen to his pathos. Listen to Samson bleeding out to us from the pages of Holy Writ. That's many of us. Lord, I finally got the job. Finally made it to supervisor. And Lord, are you going to leave me out here by myself? Because now I'm supervising, I'm trying to change the culture with old employees. Lord, finally, I got the house. Lord, are you going to let me get in this house simply to get the house on foreclosure? Lord, I finally made it down the aisle. And this first year has been the hardest year of my life. It's hell. God, you let me get here. But God, are you going to let me die? Are you going to let my enemies laugh and have the last word over me? And we don't talk about that in church, but this is the word. It's easy to obtain. It's harder to maintain. It's easy to walk down the aisle and get married, but it's hard to stay married. It's easy to have children, but it's harder to raise them in the fear and admonition of the Lord. It's easy to come to church and lift up your hands, but it's hard to love your enemies and do good to those who despitefully use you. It's easy to obtain, but it's hard to maintain. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, it's easy to get it, but it's hard to hold on to it. Lord, I gave you my hand. I was baptized, but sometimes it's hard for me to hold on to my faith when I'm frustrated. Church, no one tells us when you're at your best, sometimes the only company you have is silence and the complexity of your own thoughts. I say it again. No one tells you when you're at your best, sometimes the only company you have is silence and the complexity of your own thoughts. Look at Samson. No one tells us how to handle the aftermath of success. Everybody says be successful, but nobody tells you how to deal with the loneliness of success. Samson missed it. He says, Lord, are you going to let me die? Samson missed it. He thought God had abandoned him. But the fact of the matter is God had always been there. God was there when the angel told his mother that she was going to have him. God was there when the lion tried to take him out and he killed the lion. God was there even when he tried to get mixed up with the woman of Timnah of the Philistines. God was there when he killed the men of Ashkelon to pay his debt. God had always been there. And church, can I tell you this? When we are tired, we have the tendency to confuse our reality with the truth of God or the truth about God. Oh, let me push it. Your reality is life is tough, but the truth is God is still good. Your reality is you've lost some stuff, but the truth about God is a rewarder for those who diligently seek to him, and God can give you back more than what you ever lost. Your reality is you've dealt with some bitter moments, but the truth about God is if you keep on walking with him, he'll get sweeter and sweeter as the day go by. The reality is you are sick, but the truth about God is God is Jehovah Rapha, the God who reveals. Yes, I got a reality, but my truth about God is bigger. Can I tell you something, church, and I'm done? Don't allow your fleeting emotions to produce a fragmented faith. Oh, yes. Don't allow your fleeting emotions to produce a fragmented faith, because your reality is no match for the truth about God, because God is the same today, yesterday, and forevermore. Let me push it. If God was there for you in 87, he'll be here for you in 2017. If God was there for you last month, God will show up again this month. If God brought you out before, God can do it again. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I know you got a hard reality, but your reality is no match for God. I'm done. But finally, God provides uniquely and appropriately. Samson poured out his emotions. And what I like about God, God addresses our needs even when we are off course with him. You missed your shout. Samson had been off course, chasing after Philistine women, scooping out honey out of the carcasses of lions, picking up the jawbones of a donkey, in constant violation in the valley of Timnah. He had no business being around vines, but God shows up and still meets his need. And that's the fact of somebody's existence. You can adjust your halo because God has came through for you even when you are off course with him. And that's why I shout, because I haven't always been walking close to God. I haven't always been so sophisticated to know his word, but he says, look at that Joker Parks. I know he needs me, so let me get down there in a hurry. The text says, God opened up a hollow place. Wait a minute. When we find stress and duress in our lives, we're always trying to run away. We're trying to plan an escape route. But this is the shout, Bobby. The shout is this: God gave Samson exactly what he needed where he was. Don't miss that. I came to tell somebody, stop trying to run away from stress. That's why the psalmist says, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will take care of you in the midst of the heathen. Stop running, because if you run, you may be running away from your blessing. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, stop trying to run away from your stress, because God can give you a spring of water even in a stressful place. Then he opens up a hollow place. Wait a minute, this is tension, church. Hollow, there's nothing in it. But God opens up the very thing that no one expects anything can come out of. And God gives Samson water. Doesn't that sound like God? When you think nothing else good can come out of your situation, when you think you've hit rock bottom and there is no resources, listen, let me tell you, when you hit rock bottom, that's when you know you've leaned on the rock. I wish y'all were hearing me 11:15. When you hit the bottom, that's when you know that you're really leaning on God, because when God is all that you got, God is all that you need. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, when God is all that you have, God is all that you need. Lord gives them water. Wait a minute, water. Something so simple, something so mundane, we treat it as if it's minuscule. Water. Samson needed refreshment. Who am I talking to this morning? You've had career, you have career. You have family, you have accolades. But the very thing that you've worked so hard to get, maybe that's the very thing that's draining you. You're gifted, but your gift keeps you and your wheels constantly turning. You never can find any rest or relaxation. You find yourself spent from it all. You need refreshment. Listen, Samson, when the Lord provides for him, the place was called Jawbone Hill. But he renames the place the spring of the one who called. That's what I like about God. God can turn your stressful place into a spring of living water. And I wonder, do I have at least 50 people here that can testify that you've been in a stressful place and God has transformed it into a blessing place? Refreshment, that's what you need. Money can't buy you refreshment. You can't buy refreshment at Kroger. You can't go to Dillard's and get refreshment. You can't get it at Walmart. That's some things only God can give. Refresh is the number one doctor recommended eye drops for artificial tears. Number one, your eyes get dry, no longer to produce the substance that's needed to keep things clear. And when your eyes get red, you go to the doctor. Doctor says, go and get some refresh. Go to the pharmacist. I'm having eye problems. Number one, doctor recommended. Doctor recommended artificial tears, refresh. That's what I like about God. When we find ourselves dry, depleted, worn out from the world, God says, I'll give you some refreshment. But there's one thing about it, it's not artificial. God bless you, New Hope. May the Lord bless you real good. I'm glad today that I serve a God that can give refreshment. Shake your neighbor's hand and say, neighbor, I'm glad that the Lord will give me refreshment. And what I like about the Lord's refreshment is it never runs out. Have I got a witness here? It never spoils. God's refreshment never has an expiration date. Have I got a witness here? Shake your neighbor's hand and say, neighbor, oh neighbor, I'm so glad that the Lord will give me what I need. Have I got help in the room? Is there anybody here in the 11:15 service that can lift up your hand and say, I'm evidence that the Lord will give you what you need? I'll close here with this. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, and let me stand. I'm tired, I get weak, and I get a little worn. Shake your neighbor's hand today and say, neighbor, it's all right to get tired. It's all right to get worn. Tell them, neighbor, let me encourage you. Neighbor, let me speak life to you. Tell them, I got one thing to tell you, and I'm not going to bother you no more. Tell them, when nothing else would help, love lifted me. Have I got help in the room? I was sinking deep in sin, far
from the peaceful shore. I was very deeply stained within. I was sinking to rise no more. But the master of the sea, he heard my despairing cry from the waters. He lifted me safe. Somebody shout safe. Safe am I. It was love that lifted me when I couldn't see my way. It was love that lifted me when I was ready to give up. It was love that lifted me when I was ready to throw in the towel. It was love. It was love. Doors of the church is open.